Meet Ruben.
Hello.
Ruben is a private pilot with 900 hours in his logbook. He prides himself on a professional approach to his flying. But a few weeks ago, he bussed Class A controlled airspace south of London when his GPS gave erroneous readings. He'd been flying from Fair Oaks in England to Caen in France.
So it's probably almost 2 weeks after I got back from the trip to France, and someone else in the group actually sent me an email saying, I think this was your flight. It was an email from the CAA basically saying that the aircraft had been seen infringing the controlled airspace just to the south of Fair Oaks.
And I suspect your heart sunk, did it?
Yeah, I got a complete knot in my stomach at this point, initially thinking there must be a mistake.
Ruben had been using his Sky Echo electronic conspicuity device to display his GPS position on his Skydemon moving map software. The software would normally warn him if he's coming close to infringing controlled airspace, but this time it didn't.
Today we're going to fly the same route that Ruben flew that day to take a look at the complexity of the airspace in question. We've also got 3 electronic conspicuity devices on board and switched on, connected to moving maps, and we're going to see if we can replicate the problem.
Without infringing controlled airspace this time.
Yeah, without infringing.
Clear prop! Ruben's flight routed through some of the most complex airspace structures in Britain, with 6 changes in the base of controlled airspace in just 18 miles. A mitigating factor perhaps. The incorrect GPS information played a part too, but Ruben wholly and completely accepts this was his fault.
The root cause was definitely a failure on my part in terms of planning. I had a plan, I didn't stick to it, and when I changed from that plan, which we sometimes have to do for various reasons, I didn't cross-check adequately to ensure that I was going to remain outside controlled airspace.
In this video we'll examine Ruben's failings, but his case also gives us an opportunity to highlight the limitations of GPS moving map applications, especially when altitude is concerned. Yes, they've revolutionised how we plan and execute our flights, but perhaps some of us are relying on them just a little too much.
Tap the brakes. You're up.
Ruben's departure airfield was Fair Oaks, just south of the UK's biggest aerodrome, London Heathrow. In fact, the Fair Oaks air traffic zone lies partly within the Heathrow Class D control zone, so Ruben's first job was to climb not above 1,500 feet to stay out of that.
So you just departed Fair Oaks there, and you were routing through this bit.
Yep.
Initially 1,500 feet out of Fair Oaks because of the
Below
Heathrow.
1,500, yep.
Yeah. And then this bit 1,800.
That's right.
To be below 2,000, right?
That's correct.
To Walpolston. There's a lot of airspace here, isn't there?
Well, as we go to Guildford, that's where it goes to 2,500, and then as we go towards Godalming, it goes to 3,500.
Because of the complexity of the airspace around here, pilots are advised to either get a service from Farnborough radar or at least maintain a listening watch on their frequency while using their listening squawk so they can contact you in the event of a problem. Ruben initially contacted Farnborough, but they told him they were unable to open his flight plan, so he switched to London Information instead, a non-radar flight information service. But what if Farnborough had opened his flight plan and he'd remained on their frequency? I'm deliberately routing close to controlled airspace today to see if using a listening squawk would give me any protection. My call sign is Golf Bravo Mike India Victor.
Golf Bravo Mike India Victor, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor, Farnborough radar.
Golf Bravo Mike India Victor.
Golf India Victor, report intentions, controlled airspace west of you, 1.5 miles.
Roger, turning southbound now, routing Littlehampton. Golf India Victor.
Golf India Victor, thank you. Radar just caught up with you in the turn, thank you.
We thought that might happen.
Yeah.
If Ruben had been on Farnborough's frequency, as we've just demonstrated, there's a good chance they would have been able to prevent his infringement. So what exactly did he do wrong, and what part did his GPS reception play in the whole event? Ruben's plan was to remain below 2,500 feet until reaching the Midhurst VOR. That's because he'd noted that on his route the base of the Class A LTMA had risen to 3,500 feet, but then dropped again very quickly to 2,500 feet.
Why didn't you stick to the plan that you'd got? You'd done the pre-flight planning, you'd worked this out, you knew you couldn't climb until Midhurst, which we're coming up on now. What made you change your mind?
I think it was actually like today. It's a beautiful day out there. You can see the sea, the coast approaching. And on that day I thought, I can just start my climb early to my cruise altitude, which was planned at flight level 55 on my way to Caen.
Before initiating his climb, Ruben checked the virtual radar on his Skydemon moving map. The virtual radar shows the vertical profile of the airspace on your track with your aeroplane superimposed at your present altitude. It's a useful feature because at a glance you can see all the bases of airspace ahead relative to your altitude. The problem was, on Ruben's flight, the GPS information coming from his Sky Echo 2 was under-reading his altitude by more than 1,500 feet.
You cross-referenced the virtual radar, which is at the bottom of our screen here, and we can see that shelf that we're just passing now of where it's dropped down, but that's not what you saw on your day.
Oh, well, on this particular flight, the moving map software was actually showing that I was almost 2,000 feet lower than my actual altitude, and therefore the aircraft in the moving map virtual radar was showing considerably below the basic controlled airspace. And so that visual cross-reference before I commenced that climb early, as I say, I think there was some confirmation bias there where I believed I was going to be below controlled airspace. Looked at the virtual radar, it confirmed, and off the back of that I commenced my climb, just clipping this bit that we've been through, 4 or 5 miles between 2,500 and 3,000 feet.
So your virtual radar was reading the wrong altitude. Do you blame that for the infringement?
Not at all. It was definitely my mistake. As you say, I had a plan. I decided to deviate from that plan, which isn't that common in flying. But then I didn't really verify adequately that my new plan was going to keep me out of controlled airspace. The technology, the virtual radar, just had an influence, but it was my mistake in the first place in not following through on my plan.
In its manual, Skydemon warns that the GPS altitude displayed in its app will not be as accurate as a properly set pressure altimeter. But how many of us knew that the error could be so large?
So I've been looking into this a bit more, and I've been talking to Avionics, who make the Sky Echo and also Skydemon. Firstly, let me say this, I'm not trying to do either of these companies down. They're great, their products are good value, and they've revolutionised our flying and improved safety, without doubt. But Ruben's case has shown that they do have their limitations, and as pilots we should be fully aware of them. So let's start with the Sky Echo. On its website here, Avionics says that Sky Echo uses a high integrity aviation certified GPS with fault detection and exclusion, and it's fitted with an integrated baro altimeter. That would give me confidence as a pilot that I could trust its data, so I asked Avionics about this and they sent me a statement. They said that Sky Echo is a non-certified carry-on piece of equipment that in the main delivers an accurate lateral GPS source to provide its core function as an ADS-B transceiver. It turns out though, in this statement, that its barometric altimeter is only used as part of its traffic detection and ADS-B transmission functions. The altitude sent by Sky Echo to Skydemon and other moving map apps comes from its GNSS receiver. In its statement, Avionics says that Sky Echo offers no vertical navigation guidance capability, and as with any GPS, vertical accuracy is significantly worse than in the lateral sense. The company says that vertical inaccuracy could be as much as 60 meters or 200 feet. But Ruben's device was under-reading by more than 1,500 feet, and analysis of the data from more than 50 of his flights suggests the errors weren't a one-off. On this, Avionics says it accepts that taking a carry-on Sky Echo into a largely metal aircraft like the PA-28 means some antenna blanking can occur, and this could affect performance. This requires pilots to remain vigilant and retain their situational awareness of both the airspace and other traffic sharing it with them. Ruben had his Sky Echo positioned on the mid-cabin side window of his Arrow. Avionics says this isn't ideal. They recommend locating it further forward in the front cabin to improve GPS performance. In concluding their statement, UAvionics states that SkyEcho works exceptionally well in the majority of cases, but performance excursions cannot be ruled out, particularly when in a challenging electronic environment for which it is not optimized. Pilots should always be cognizant of this and where the buck stops.
Ruben totally accepts that the buck stops with him, and he doesn't blame SkyEcho nor Skydemon for his infringement. But the case has been an eye-opener for him.
But how concerned are you that your SkyEcho was giving Skydemon information that was more than 500 feet out on that virtual radar?
I think it's important for people to be aware of, myself obviously included, as part of our threat and error management. I definitely considered the scenario in which the GPS has failed and there's no position information or altitude information given. That's something I experienced multiple times in flight and is to be expected. I never really expected that the information would be partially correct, so longitudinally correct, but the altitude being incorrect.
So how are our devices doing today? We have 3 of them running, all on the side windows in the back. It turns out that throughout our flight today, they've all been reading the altitude pretty accurately, with errors no greater than 100 feet. But if you look closely at the altitude window, you'll notice a coloured triangle. I didn't know what it was until I reread the Skydemon manual. It turns out that the colour of the triangle is an indication of estimated GPS accuracy. The triangle should be blue if the altitude is accurate to within 50 feet. A green triangle means it's accurate to within 100 feet. Yellow if the error could be as much as 150 feet. Orange if it could be up to 250 feet out. And red if the error could be more than 250 feet.
We've learned that there's now this, and I didn't know this before reading up on this, there's this little coloured triangle in the corner of the altitude window there, which on mine is green. What colour is yours? Yours is green as well.
That's correct.
And the pilot aware is green as well. So mine's now gone blue, so it's even better accuracy, I think, to within 50 feet. Now, I wasn't aware of that was there before, and we don't know what that was reading on the day of your flight. It might well have been reading red, showing it was well out of accuracy. But what do you think about that? Is that enough, do you think, to be told as a pilot that vertical information is inaccurate?
Yeah, so in flight, I would refer to the altimeter shown in Skydemon, and I've not really looked at that flag before in terms of checking the GPS accuracy. But the virtual radar is obviously using that GPS reported altitude in determining your relationship with controlled airspace. And in that piece of the view, that information regarding the GPS accuracy and signal integrity is not displayed.
And you think it should be more obvious?
I think that would certainly help.
Yeah, I mean, you think if it was 500 feet out, it would show on there, you can't rely on this bit of the screen, right? And also, we rely on these airspace alerts, these warnings that come up. Now, that wouldn't have worked either.
That's correct.
So I've been in touch with Skydemon about this to see why the warnings aren't more prominent in the app. Tim Dawson from Skydemon told me that displaying GPS accuracy is hard and there's no good way to do it. He says if a GPS chipset actually knew how inaccurate it was being, it would of course correct itself and no longer be inaccurate. iOS and SkyEcho both hand us a vertical accuracy or vertical figure of merit value calculated from their GNSS inputs, he says. These are what produce the coloured flags shown in Skydemon's altitude display, but they cannot be relied upon as particularly useful. Tim says the reason we display the flag is because the data exists, but the reason it isn't more prominent is that the data is not very useful. Anecdotally, Tim Dawson says, I've seen altitude figures reported with a high confidence value, a blue flag, but that differed from actual altitude by over 1,000 feet. This is why cross-checking of GPS altitude is always essential. So some fascinating information from both UAvionics and Skydemon there. In my experience, the altitude derived from the GPS receiver is usually extremely accurate, and I have to say that this has led me to put my trust in it, and let's face it, we're all relying quite heavily now on these devices in the cockpit. But Ruben's experience is a salutary reminder that we need to tread very, very carefully.
So how did Ruben get on with the CAA? They take infringements very seriously and can suspend a pilot's licence in the more serious cases.
You cooperated with the CAA.
Yes.
You held your hands up, and I mean, admirably so. You know, one could have gone on a big rant about how the electronic conspicuity device, the Skydemon, was displaying incorrect information, and that influenced your decision. But you didn't. You owned up to it, and you got a satisfactory response in your view. What's your feeling about how that whole process worked like?
So I was obviously very concerned when I got the initial notification, and the worst thing I think you could do is to start Googling
as to what might happen next.
But I thought it was really important to firstly respond in a timely manner, and secondly be as factual as possible in providing the information as to what had happened. And that's really how I approached it. I really wanted to lead with the facts, and unfortunately they pointed to my personal error in planning.
And how was the CAA with you? Because you asked for a conversation on the phone with them as well. How did that go? And how would you sum up your feeling about how they approached it?
The conversation with the CAA was actually very good, and the purpose of the conversation was actually to raise awareness around the issues I'd seen with the reporting of the GPS altitude on the moving map software, not really to discuss my specific case. So I probably had it was about a half an hour phone call with them. It was actually arranged very quickly, within 2 days of me requesting it, and both participants from the CAA were both knowledgeable, and it was a very positive and engaging conversation.
There's no comeback on you. You've been sent a letter which probably says something like, don't do that again.
Yes.
To cut a long story short, but no regulatory action against you. A mark on your file, but no regulatory action against you. And you presumably are very happy with that.
Yes, but I would have also been happy to have done the course if they had required some retraining. I signed up for courses voluntarily. I think it's actually a good thing to continue to learn as pilots. But yes, obviously very relieved that they didn't take the case further. Nice view of Gatwick.
Yeah.
If you want to reduce the risk of busting airspace yourself, and let's be honest, it's something we're all concerned about, why not take the free infringement avoidance course on the Flying Reporter Groundschool? The Groundschool is powered by EasyPPL, and you can access it through my website. The link is on the screen and in the video description. Pilots with many hundreds of hours say they found the course useful, and being free, there really is no reason not to take a look.
Golf India Victor, final runway 07 right to land.
Golf India Victor, Roger, continue approach.
Continue approach, Golf India Victor.
I'm really grateful to Ruben for agreeing to appear in the video and sharing his story with all of us. Please be kind to him in the comments. He does really accept his failings and isn't trying to deflect from his responsibility. I think it's been really helpful for him to share his experience with us. My thanks to Avionics and Skydemon for engaging with me on this as well. Once again, please don't think I'm bashing either product, quite the contrary.
Golf India Victor, runway 07 right, surface wind 010, 12 knots, clear to land.
Clear to land, runway 07 right, Golf India Victor.
By the way, if you're new to using Skydemon or you just want to know how to get the most out of it, my friend James Lee from Buddies Aviation runs both face-to-face and online sessions. He has over 3,000 hours experience using it across the UK and Europe. You can contact him through his website. That is where we'll leave things for now. Until next time, fly safely, my friends.